Hello everyone, and welcome to today's show with SportsbookReview.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk some UFC. Like always, joining me today, we have SBR's UFC expert, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. Before we get into the entire main card breakdown for UFC 258, Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns, just go ahead real quick, give this video a like, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a show. Now, how are you guys doing today? It's so lovely to see you. Before we get into our main card breakdown for this upcoming weekend, like always, I just want to recap what went on, what happened over the weekend. And let me tell you, it was a great weekend. Honestly, even though I did not win my bets, it was still a great weekend because there were a lot of shocking fights. But I want to see how and hear how it went for you guys. Dave, I'll start with you like always. How did your Saturday go?
Terrible. It was awful. See, do you know what? I'm going to blame Matt. Okay, this week is Matt's fault. He says I'm going to copy Dave, and, Dave seems to get it right. And we hit the main card, and it was going great. It was fine. Benial Dariush, he won his fight, got that one right. Then it was Pantoja won. And then from that fight, it all went downhill for my predictions anyway. Clay Guida pulled it out of the bag. I don't know what Michael Johnson is doing. Send that guy to Bellator. Obviously, the main event, Volkov beat the crap out of Overeem. He just folded up and he doesn't want to. It looks like he doesn't want to take shots anymore anyway. And I've left this one till last because obviously we now have another highlight reel to add to the UFC library, which is absolutely incredible, by Corey Sandhagen when he flattened Frankie Edgar before we even had the chance to sip our drinks and settle into the fight. Absolutely incredible from Sandhagen. Sky's the limit for that kid from here on out. But let's crack on with the juicy friendship fight this weekend in 258.
Yes, you're so right about the Sandhagen. Oh my God, I was speechless because I was not expecting that. I predicted them to go the distance, and it was literally the complete opposite because it was the beginning of the fight. But how about you, Matt? How did your Saturday go?
Oh, it weren't good. It weren't good. It was a long night at the office, especially when heading into the main event. Hats off to Corey Sandhagen for decimating Frankie Edgar, and congratulations to Alexander Volkov for making me look like a bigger schmuck than usual, which is hard. It is hard to make someone like myself seem like a bigger schmuck. But Alexander Volkov did it on Saturday night, and I'd like to apologize to everyone who watched this show, who I cursed seemingly with putting over Dave, and then it crept over into Sunday into what was the most one-sided Super Bowl since, I think, Leon Lett played football.
Okay. I mean, a lot of us were on Overeem, so a lot of us are disappointed. But for the Super Bowl, I had Tampa Bay moneyline and +3, so I am so happy about that. But anyway, whatever happened last week, and that's in the past, we're going to make everything much better this upcoming weekend because we have a wonderful, wonderful fight card. Let's get into the main card breakdown. We have UFC 258 with Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. Let's start with not the main fight. For the first fight on the main card, we have middleweight Maki Pitolo versus Julian Marquez. Via BetOnline, Marquez is -170 and Maki Pitolo is +145. Dave, I'll start with you for your breakdown and pick for the first fight.
Yeah, it's quite a tough fight to predict. I'm not going to lie straight off the bat, but I think I'm going to lean Julian Marquez in this one. He looked incredible in his Dana White Contender Series fight. He had a brutal knockout over Phil Hawes, who is actually fighting on this card as well. And then he followed suit with his actual debut in the UFC with a submission over Darren Stewart. Now, if you watch that Darren Stewart fight, he sure as hell put Marquez under pressure in that first round, but he pulled through. What stood out for me in that fight was his cardio. The cardio didn't seem to deplete all too much for these big boys as well. He went on and he was able to finish Darren Stewart. And then in his most recent contest, he fought Di Chirico to a close split decision, but he torn a rare tendon in his arm during that fight. So it's hard to gauge whether he, lost that fight completely down to skill set. I don't think it would be. It's gonna be due to that injury. That injury has assisted Di Chirico, and even still, Marquez fought his way through the entire 15 minutes and only lost by a split decision. So, yeah, with that potential, it was a potential career-ending injury too, and it's put him on the sidelines now for 2 years. How is that layoff going to affect him? Does he still possess the same aggression that he did before? Has the injury left a permanent mark on him? See, these variables cannot be answered until we see him return to action. Now, Marquez is comfortable striking or grappling. Wherever the fight takes place, he's happy to go there, and he's a large middleweight for the division. He could easily be a light heavyweight. He's got great scrambling ability for a big guy. He handles constant pressure. He handled constant pressure on the feet from the likes of Darren Stewart, as I mentioned before. And I think I'd edge him in this fight. Marquez is going to be happy to, as I said, stay standing or let this fight hit the ground. But I think he can strategize to make this one ugly. You look at Maki Pitolo and one of his fights in particular against Kalen Potter, sheer exhaustion from grappling with Kalen Potter is now leaving Maki Pitolo with losses on his record like Kalen Potter. So I think that's what's cutting it for me. I just think, is 1-3 in the UFC. Coconut Bombs is his nickname, but he just hasn't shown us that many bombs. I think the size and strength of Marquez is going to assist him in taking the W this weekend. And do you know what? Neither of these men like the judges' scorecards. So I would not be surprised to see a submission or a knockout in this one. I noticed there's some pretty decent value on the undermarket too, because, picking a side, it is quite a tough fight to predict. So if you want some value outside of that, then take a look at the under-over market.
All right. Well, how about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or do you have a different pick for this fight?
When I'm taking a look at this fight right now, I'm staying away from it. Even though Marquez is 7-2, he's only had 4 fights in the UFC, and Pitolo has also only had, this is going to be, Marquez's 4th, and Pitolo, this is going to be his 5th, but as Dave said, he's 1-3. When it comes to knockouts, Pitolo's knocked out 7, but we haven't seen that yet inside the octagon, except for his TKO win over Charles Byrd. This is the biggest fight for both of these guys, making it onto the main card of a pay-per-view. The bright lights are going to be on them. If I'm looking at this, I'm looking at Julian Marquez, and the only opponent that stood out for him on his record, if you look at his Sherdog, is Matt Hamill, and that was in Combate Americas back in 2016. So when you look at the level of opponents between these guys, and DiChirico is no one, he's no one to sniff at when it comes to an opponent. But for me, this is a stay away fight. I think this goes to a decision. And for Pitolo, the deeper it goes into the fight, it's a 50-50 because he's 3-3 when it comes to decisions. And he's not, if he's going to try to aim for the knockout, he's got a good opportunity. He's 7-2 he's +5 in terms of knockouts, in terms of knockout differential. He's knocked out 7, been knocked out twice, but it proves he has a chin. But Marquez coming off a decision, he's going to go the full 3 rounds. I think this is a full 15-minute fight, and I'll give a slight edge to Marquez.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. If you want to get in on this fight, again, via BetOnline, Marquez is -170, and Pitolo is +145. Let's move on to the next fight. We have middleweight Kelvin Gastelum versus Ian Heinich. Via BetOnline, Gastelum is -210, and Heinich is +180. Matt, I'll continue with you for your breakdown and pick for the next fight.
All right. Well, this one is Kelvin. We got Gastelum and Ian Heinisch. One fight was swapped out of the card, and we're not covering that one. But for Gastelum and Heinisch, Gastelum's on a 3-fight losing streak, but it's against quality opponents like Jack Hermanson, Darren Till, and Israel Adesanya. But we're seeing with a lot of UFC cuts, Gastelum in the back of his head has to think, if I lose here, if I lose my 4th straight, especially against some, even though it's a guy like Ian Heinisch, who's a top contender at middleweight, it's a problem. This is a make-or-break fight for Kelvin Gastelum. And this is a guy who's beaten Jacare. He retired Michael Bisping taking the fight on short notice. He's 4-2-1, and he should be 5-2. That one fight was against Vitor Belfort. He got popped for a marijuana metabolite, and honestly, that shouldn't count in USADA. Shout out, free the Diaz brothers. But he's knocked out 6, submitted 4, 6 decision wins. He's never been knocked out, but he has tapped, and he is He's 6-4 on a decision. So the deeper this fight goes, the more advantage it does have for Gastelum, and it's a big advantage for Gastelum, but more so for Ian Heinisch. When you look at Ian Heinisch, when he goes to the scorecards, he's 7-2. And also another guy that's not been knocked out, but another guy who's knocked out 5 opponents in his career. That makes it a big opportunity for one of these guys to get to be the first to knock out the other one. I think we're going to see a more apprehensive Gastelum. I think he's going to be playing it very safe in this fight, especially early on. We could be wrong. He may think that he needs to be aggressive and try to get the finish. But this is a guy who just knocked out Gerald Meerschaert, but he was on a 2-fight losing streak. Lost to Derek Brunson and Omari Akhmedov. I'm going to go with Heinisch here, but it's going to be a decision. I think there's going to be a little bit of inactivity on Gastelum's end, and that's going to see him 10-9s across the board because Heinisch is going to be a little more active, a little more aggressive, try to follow up that TKO with another one, and I think it's going to be a 30-29 fight.
There we have it. Well, how about you, Dave? Do you agree with Matt, or what's your take for this next fight?
No, I completely disagree. Is so wrong. Ian Heinisch not winning this one. I'm only joking. Look, Ian Heinisch, aka international drug smuggler, aka bombs in his hands, whatever you want to call him. He's got one of the best stories in MMA. So if you're bored this evening, go look up Ian Heinisch because his story into the world of martial arts is definitely an interesting one. But he is one of the Dana White Contender Series OGs, really, because he participated in that tournament. I think it must have been season 1 or 2. I'm not sure. Brutal first round KO put Heinisch straight into the UFC roster. Was busy in 2019, but since then his activity has really lowered, and we haven't seen much of him. 2020 and beyond. He got his first official knockout since his debut on the Contender Series over GM3 in his previous fight, and he's now actually ranked. He's made his way into that top 15, and I think his training. I noticed that he's trained at Factory X, Tiger Muay Thai. He's currently at Genesis, and to me, that's someone that really wants to evolve their game, and you can see it, with the finish of Gerald Meerschaert. He made that fight seem, like a complete mismatch in terms of styles. He is, I'd say, probably the definition of mixed martial arts, Ian Heinisch, where his skills, they're very well-rounded, well-versed. He's not, he doesn't put all his eggs into one basket. He's not scared to grapple or strike. He's versatile everywhere. And he loves to begin his fights. You'll notice this with Ian Heinisch. He begins a lot of his fights with the leg kick. He gauges the distance, fights like a traditional kickboxer, and he uses some great feints and level changes to confuse and distract his opponents. And since training with Tiger Muay Thai, you can see this in his kicking and his Muay Thai stance. You can tell that the trainer's been working out for him, and now he's facing Kelvin Gastelum, as Matt mentioned, former title challenger, now riding a 3-fight losing streak, which is rough. He's the Ultimate Fighter middleweight tournament winner. He's the former title challenger. Majority of his career has been built inside the UFC, and when you look at his record, it's dropping some of the biggest names in the sport. He is not short of experience, and he gave up wrestling to do martial arts full time, and that's obviously paying off because he has remained as a top 15 fighter for as long as I can remember now. And this losing streak, it's not as rough as some others that you can compare to. It seems bad when you say 3-fight losing streak, but the level of competition is elite, and he was only finished once. And he's only 29 years old. A lot of people forget that. Kelvin Gastelum is very young in his career. He's also a great kickboxer. And his reactions at this weight class, you see, he gives up a bit in height, but he makes up for that in power and speed, as you see with his 7 knockouts in the UFC. And he holds a great takedown defense and offense with his Division 3 wrestling background. And he went the full 5 rounds with Israel. So that's something in itself. He gave a better showing against Adesanya than most, and that was one of the best fights of 2019. For me, this fight is a significant drop down in competition for Gastelum, But I think that's exactly what he needs right now. He's on this 3-fight losing skid, and this is the worst run of his career. But, you know, the good news is he is still 29, he's still young, he's still learning, and arguably he might not have even entered his prime as of yet. Gastelum still owns some of the best defensive footwork in this middleweight division. That smaller a size, as I said, it allows him for more speed and more momentum at 185 over these slower, plodding middleweights. And even you look at his record, even with his 2 losses via submission, his jiu-jitsu awareness is still of an elite level. And I'm not really sure what Ian Heinisch can offer Gastelum that he hasn't already felt or prepared for. Now, the power of Heinisch could put Gastelum out, yes. But I think this fight's going to allow Gastelum to get back on track. And as I mentioned with Heinisch and his kicking, too many of them kicks, we're just going to see Gastelum wrestle Heinisch. Amari Akhmedov easily took Ian Heinisch down. So I think, you know, a former junior wrestling champion in Gastelum might be able to do the same too. But all in all, I'm siding with Kelvin Gastelum to win this one. And I think he can get the finish as well, because that would be perfect to get him right back on track. 3-fight losing skid, forget that, comes back and finishes Ian Heinisch in the 3rd round. I like the sound of that, and that's my pick for this fight.
Beautiful. Well, if you guys do want to get in on this fight, again, via Bet Online, Kelvin Gastelum is -210 and Ian Heinisch is +180. Let's move on to the co-main. We have women's flyweight Maycee Barber versus Alexa Grosso. Via Bet Online, Grasso is -123 and Maycee Barber is +103. Dave, I'll continue with you for your breakdown and pick for the co-main.
This is an ugly one. This is extremely hard to predict. I have watched every fight for each girl over and over again, and I just can't gauge this fight whatsoever. Alexa Grasso, 12-3-0, 27 years old. She's got that Mexican fiery spirit. She fought through the Mexican regional scene undefeated, and she competed in Invicta before she came to the UFC. She didn't fight through the Ultimate Fighter, but she made her debut on the Ultimate Fighter finale. Since then, she's alternating her wins and losses. But, you know, she has been fighting some high-level girls. She's 4-3 in the UFC, but you look at the common denominator between them 3 losses, and it's just a grappling disadvantage in every single one of them. Her 3 losses come against 3 high-level grapplers, and she's suffered in them fights. But when you look at fights that are suiting her style, the striking exchanges, the boxing matchups, she's doing well and she's winning, and she's doing well on points. Her traditional boxing style and stance is great, and you know what? I'm not sure that Maycee Barber is going to be able to come in here and finish Alexa Grasso, how she has done so easily with some of these other females. And Maycee Barber had all the hype, right? So she was 7-0 coming into her last fight. Everyone thought she was going to run through Roxanne Modafferi. I believe the betting line was -400 or -500, and look what happened. Yeah, you can say it was all the injury, but when you go back and look at that fight, look at the before the injury, there's not much she could do against the veteran in Roxanne. See, Barber, she's been fighting since she was a child, and a professional MMA career. She got into the UFC because she went on a 4-run run and finished everyone. She's been hyped up ever since, and that knockout run continued. So obviously the hype grew bigger, and she's won all her fights via finish. Then she came up against Roxanne Modafferi, unfortunately tore her ACL. So there's a solid excuse there for Macy, don't get me wrong. But when looking back over her fights, her defensive striking is not good at all. I think her power and her aggression, her confidence is what has won her all of these fights by finish, and it seems so effortless when she does it. She's also a karate black belt and a Gracie jiu-jitsu purple belt. The difference between her striking and Grasso's striking is that Barber likes to get on the inside and knock her opponent out. She's young, she's real dangerous, and as I mentioned, that confidence is great, and I think that's helped her a lot. but it is also costing her in these counter strikes. And when I see the counter strikes coming from someone with such a low level of striking output like Roxanne Modafferi, it's a worry to put your money behind Barber or Grasso this weekend. The thing for Barber is that left jab and right cross combo, and she is a southpaw. Grasso has fought one southpaw, and that was Tatiana Suarez. She did get choked out, but when you look at the striking in that, you could tell that she was uncomfortable fighting the southpaw stance. Due to that reason, and the fact that Maycee Barber is now the betting underdog due to the public, I'm going to take Maycee Barber. Now, this is not me picking Macy based on complete skill set. It is to do with the odds, the line movement. Too, because she opened up at a -130. Yep. She's now +110, I believe. And in a 50-50 fight, in a fight where I believe it's 50-50, I'm going to be taking the underdog, and I'm going to take that finishing power over the technical skill that's going to pick up the decision by Grasso. But with that said, Barber keeps her chin out there, and she's been clocked in all of her fights. Either she doesn't care, her chin's solid, she just runs through it and storms people, Ngannou style, or she's just not there yet, and she'll fix that problem, and she may have even fixed that problem coming into this fight. But yeah, in terms of prediction, I'm gonna slightly lean Maycee Barber, take that dog money, and more important, I'm just really looking forward to this fight. A lot of people are giving it slack, but this is co-main event status. People need to understand they are hyping up Maycee Barber. The UFC want her to win. They want her to be that star that they're missing. And Grasso could certainly upset that for him.
Yeah, well, you brought up Macy's odds, and just yesterday at Bet Online, her odds were +123, and now today she's +103. So you see that line movement right there. But Matt, how about you? What's your breakdown and pick for the co-main?
So yeah, Dave made a lot of great points, but I don't want to curse him again. But the problem with Maycee Barber is that Roxanne Modafferi has been her toughest competition to date in the UFC. And when she was faced against that tough competition, as Dave said, injuries or not, she got the L. She went all 3 rounds, which is something that Alexa Grosso has done, quite a few times. She did that against Carolina Kowalkiewicz and Randa Marcos. But when it gets into the deep end of the pool, she's made a few knockouts. She's gotten into, she's been able to drop some people. She, as Dave said, she lost to Tatiana Suarez. She lost to Carla Esparza, and she lost to Felice Herring. Those are high-quality opponents, and we know this fight is in the co-main event. As Dave said, Maycee Barber is supposed to be the next Paige Van Zandt, the next, Holly Holm, the next Ronda Rousey, the next big female star of the UFC. They are building her up as such. But the problem is she went up against a talented fighter like Roxanne Modafferi, who is a question mark. You don't know what version of Roxy you're going to see every time inside the octagon. So it's hard to game plan against. And we saw the game plan really didn't work because Roxy doesn't have that much of a chin. I think Barber, the same thing as I said in the Gastelum fight, but I feel like Barber's going to be more aggressive here. She's going to have to show she can finish someone, that she can end this fight early, especially against Grasso, who has a huge knockout record and who's 3-3 in her last 6. So that can give Barber the confidence she needs to get the finish. I'm sorry, folks. It's early for me. But when it comes to this fight, I'm going to go with Barber. I feel like she'll be able to try to get a stop late in the third. I think this either ends explosively in the first or ends decisively in the third, and I'm edging towards Maycee Barber.
Beautiful. Now, if you guys do want to get on that fight again via BetOnline, Alexa Grasso is -123 and Maycee Barber is +103. And just to add on to that, one thing that I like, or not that I like, but one thing that stood out to me the most about Maycee Barber is 4 out of her last 5 fights ended in her winning via TKO. So I think that is a good thing to note. But let's move on to the main event, We have welterweight Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns, and boy, this is going to be a great fight. We have Kamaru Usman at -270 and Gilbert Burns at +230. Matt, I'll continue with you for your breakdown and pick for the main event.
I saw someone in the chat saying, bet your house, bet your car on Gilbert Burns. And yeah, Gilbert Burns is on a 6-fight winning streak. But his last win was against a post-peak Tyrone Woodley. I think Dave would agree that we've seen better days from Tyrone Woodley, especially in that Gilbert Burns fight. But he did knock out. He got a TKO on Damian Maia. He able to pull off decisions against Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Alexei Kurchenko, and Gunnar Nelson, and he got a submission win over Mike Davis. That is a resume. I don't know if that's a championship level resume. And we see Kamaru Usman, he got a unanimous. He outclassed Jorge Masvidal, late notice opponent or not. He outclassed Jorge Masvidal in the biggest hyped fight of Usman's career. It quickly went into a big money fight for Usman, and he spent 5 rounds outclassing Jorge Masvidal. This is the 3rd defense of his welterweight title. And look back to his Colby Covington fight. When Kamaru Usman is focused on finishing you, friendship or not, because both of these guys trained together. They were training partners. They were friends. But once it's inside that cage, we saw him completely destroy Colby Covington, send him to the scrap heap. And we've not really heard much of Colby Covington since. And, my opinions on that. Kamaru Usman has only been submitted once in his career, and that was in his 2nd pro fight. In that time, he's knocked out 7, he's gotten 1 submission, and he's won 9 fights by decision. Usman is a grinder. He will work on you for all 5 rounds, and he will try to embarrass you inside the cage. Burns, when it comes to decisions, he's 5-1. He's 5-1 when it goes to the scorecards, but this is a 5-round fight. This is a different atmosphere. This is a different level of the pool and other metaphors that gas bags like me like to use in situations like this. But I'm going to go with Kamaru Usman. I think he's going to put in another legendary performance. I think this is going to be one of the fights of the year. I think Gilbert Burns is going to bring the fight. He's going to bring the thunder. This is going to be a fight of the year candidate. That is my lock of the week, that it'll be a fight of the year candidate between these two. And I think Usman gets a decision after 5 rounds of incredible action from both men.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we have Govina Mishra in the comments just hyping up Burns right now. Just Burns is better than the Chiefs and he'll win. All right. Well, how about you, Dave? Do you agree that Burns is going to win, or do you have a different take for the main event?
I'm going to be honest, this is worse than the co-main event in terms of my take. This is extremely difficult to predict for the main reason that they are friends, they are former teammates, they have sparred countless times together, day in, day out, week in, week out. These guys know each other. Now, creating a game plan for the person that knows you best, good luck with that. It's going to be very interesting to see the approach that both Usman and Burns take to this fight. Knowing that they know each other's flaws from the training sessions. It's so tough. Obviously, Kamaru Usman steers towards a top-heavy grappling offense. He likes to control, hold, ground and pound, shoot for the takedowns. Gilbert Burns has been mixing it up. Gilbert Burns has been knocking people out. Gilbert Burns submits people. He's a decorated Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. Countless tournaments in BJJ, no-gi tournaments, all of it, you name it, Burns has done it. And that goes to the same with Usman in the wrestling world. So they are both, at the top of their games in their respective fields. The BJJ of Burns is way up there, and the wrestling of Usman is way up there. And these two have been fighting each other in the gym. So where do I go? Where do we go with this fight? Is Usman going to come out and wrestle Burns? Is Burns going to come out and tap Usman? I don't know. Maybe we'll see them both stand there and strike. If that's the case, and we take little sneak peeks at the training footage of Usman and Burns, I notice a speed difference, and I noticed that for Burns. I feel like Burns is going to be faster. But when it comes to power, I think that Usman's going to have the power. So then we have to try and, figure out whose striking is going to be more deadly in this fight. I have no prediction for this fight. Take the over. And you know why I say take the over? Because they're used to this. This could be the most boring fight of the year. It really could. I think it all boils down to Gilbert Burns. I really do. I think Gilbert's going to either be hesitant or he's just going to go wild and go for it and say, do you know what? Let's have it. Now, between them two, I don't care what they say in their videos. They know who the better fighter is. They know who has got the advantages in certain areas. And I just can't help but ignore Kamaru Usman's strength. I really can't. So, gun to my head, I would have to side with, you know, the 16-fight winning streak and just the sheer dominance of Kamaru Usman. I love Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns' highlight reel is absolutely incredible. But let's be honest. OAM. Do you know who that is, guys? A lot of you guys, if you don't know who it is by me saying OAM, not worth mentioning. Mike Davis. Nah. Alexei Kunchenko. Nah. Gunnar Nelson, maybe pre-2016 we can give him a thumbs up, but Gunnar Nelson is shot. Gunnar Nelson got hyped because he was in the McGregor camp when McGregor became the biggest superstar in sports. So along came a bit of hype for Gunnar Nelson, but in reality, Nelson is a flop too. Damian Maia, that was a great win because he knocked him out. But again, this is a 40-year-old grappler. So, you know, okay. And then Tyrone Woodley. Matt already mentioned Tyrone Woodley. So for as much as I think Burns is great and is you know, his highlight reel has been decent, he still went to a decision with OAM, Gunnar Nelson, and Alexei Kunchenko. And people think he's going to come out here and starch Kamaru Usman. I don't think so. So over 4.5 rounds, yes. I gave that out at plus money. So I'm not sure where it's gone now. But, you know, if you've lost a bit of that value, just take the fight to go the distance. It should pick up them points for you. And in terms of, you know, who's going to win the fight, I do think it's going to be Usman. And predicting this outcome is tough, but I just think both men are going to have a certain amount of hesitation. They're both really tough. We know that. The knockout, I don't see that happening. I really don't see a submission happening either. Competing against your training partner is going to have its pros and cons. And, you know, that one main con for me is, you know, either guy having the ability to finish this fight inside the distance. Odds makers are putting the value on this over. That's where the value is for me. So that's probably going to be more than likely going to be my only bet on this fight. Picking a side, no thanks. But yeah, Usman and the over. Yeah, let's do that.
So via Bet Online, the over 4.5 is at minus 145 now. So, but I was looking at the props, and if we say we're going to go to the distance, Kamaru Usman by points is plus 105. So that's not a bad bet right there.
I do like that.
Yes. So if you guys do want to get in on the main event, just bet aside. Kamaru Usman is minus 270 and Gilbert Burns is plus 230 via Bet Online. Now we have the main card out of the way. The last thing I want to cover and ask you guys is if you have a top prelim fight you're looking for, or if not, do you have a lock in the card that we all should look for? And Dave, I'll start with you first.
The lock. I mean, I rarely say this, but when I do, I really do mean it. And I don't think there's a way in how that Diego Lima's going to beat Belal Muhammad this weekend. The odds are quite juiced. They're hefty. Okay, anyone can pick a juice favorite, but serious. Belal Muhammad's, yes, it's going to be tough for him to lose. He's better than Diego Lima in all areas, unless it's going to be a surprise flash KO or some lucky rear naked choke. I just can't see Diego Lima causing Belal Muhammad any problems. Love Belal Muhammad personally. As I said, you know, odds are a bit juiced, but he is the perfect parlay piece. And Anthony Hernandez, he is. Do you know what? I can't completely discredit this kid, but he is coming up against Rodolfo Vieira, who is going to submit him in the first round. That's a fact. If it doesn't happen in the first round, it's going to happen within the first 2.5 minutes of the second round. He is up there with the elite of the BJJ world. he has rolled with everyone, and Anthony Hernandez is going to be so far out of his depth when this fight hits the ground that he's going to not know what to do with himself. So Rodolfo Vieira, Bilal Muhammad, for me, are quite solid locks. One of my favorite fights, on the prelims is probably going to be Ricky Simone and Brian Kelleher in terms of entertainment. I wouldn't want to side with the juice with Ricky Simone because Brian Kelleher is an impressive fighter throughout his losses. This dude brings it every single time. So that's one fight I am looking forward to. But yeah, the locks on the card got to be Bilal and Rodolfo for me.
Beautiful. Well, how about you, Matt? Do you have a top prelim fight you're looking out for or a lock on the card that we all should pay attention to?
The Bilal Muhammad fight is definitely something that I'm looking forward to, and I'm agreeing with that's the best fight for me on the prelims, and I'm agreeing that that's a lock. I'm going with Bilal Muhammad over Diego Lima on that. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I like the Andre Ewell Chris Gutierrez fight. I was actually doing a little bit of research on that fight before we got on the air, and both of them coming off of interesting. Ewell's coming off of back-to-back decision wins over Irwin Rivera and Jonathan Martinez. Gutierrez coming off against a draw against Cody Durden back in August. But when it comes to knockouts, both of these guys have 7 knockouts. Gutierrez has never been knocked out, and he's been 1-1 on submissions and 7-3 on decisions. Ewell very similar in the sense that he's gone to decisions. He's 6-2 when he goes to decisions. So this is going to be an interesting fight. I think this is going to be – it's a catchweight fight too. So I always like that weird little variable of how people respond to catchweight fights. So that's always an interesting little part of that to me is how do people work within the the catchweight space when you have a little less ability. You don't have to cut as much weight or you don't have to focus on building up as much mass as you need to. It's a happy medium, and I think this might be the best performance we see out of either guy because it may be a more comfortable fighting weight. And we might see more belts being. I'd like to see a catchweight title. Why not? Let's just see a catchweight title. Treat it like an open weight title. Once every few months, whoever holds it has to fight somebody within 15 to 20 pounds of them. Treat it like the heavyweight division. Let's have a little bit of fun.
Hey, why not? But there we have it for the entire main card breakdown for UFC 258, Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. And just like every week, it seems to be that there are fights that will be rescheduled or canceled because of COVID, personal reasons, injuries, whatever it is. But if there are any fights that we don't cover, you can always go to sbrpicks.com/UFC. We have many main card breakdowns and picks available for you guys right there. But like always, if you aren't following the guys on Twitter, definitely give them a follow. You can follow Matt at MRyan Consulting and Dave at DManion_. And while you're at it, just give SBR a follow at SBR Sports Picks. And like I just said, for more breakdowns and picks from all of SBR's UFC experts, just go to sbrpicks.com/UFC. I wish you all the best of luck this weekend, and I will see you next week.